Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting edition of Battle of the Ballads with myself, Gregory, and Joseph Dilcox. And we are on the year 2013.
Oh shit! I did the wrong year. I'm joking.
I'm
right
up
one.
through 2017 on my list of just getting prepped. And so I was fumbling with what we were on because I'm like, when didn't we already do this year? But no, it's just because of all the playlists I've done so far.
The meeting I was traveling for this week was not anything at all what it was supposed to be. So I spent today instead of listening, doing my list.
Nice. Perfect. I did that. I also did mine during a meeting, so winning there, double dipping. 2013, we had some bangers here and some songs that I thought came out much later than they did and some songs I thought came out earlier than they did. So this was definitely an interesting one. And I don't know about you guys, but when I went through the responses we got, not many actually crossed anything off my list, meaning I didn't have a lot of those actually on the list that I had. That was already quite a short list. So I found that quite interesting for my picks, at least.
Not much would have crossed things off mine. So
didn't have a chance to look at what we had for comments. So I didn't cross any off my list either.
But you didn't have a year in which you couldn't pick a song, which is also good.
That's true. There was actually, I have a pretty short list. There's a lot of music I just didn't care about this year.
Right.
But there are a couple of albums that I like. Literally could have picked any of them. So I cheated and included 3 of them in my long list and included a 4th one in my short list, which I'd normally limit myself to 3. So I cheated a little bit this year.
Oh my. What about you, Greg?
I was good. I couldn't pick a song of the year, but for the opposite reason, there's 4. I don't even have a 5 for my short list, but they're the 4 on there. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. So
interesting. I knew my 3 that I was going to narrow it down to right from the jump, simply because there's 3 songs I love, but we did receive some solid recommendations this week. Ellen gave us Wake Me Up from Avicii, Stay from Rihanna, Counting Stars from One Republic, Brave from Sarah Bareilles, Follow Your Arrow from Casey Musgraves, I think Country. I Believe When I Fall in Love It Will Be Forever, Josh Groban. She said a lovely Stevie Wonder cover. Wagon Wheel from Darius Rucker, which is actually another cover. Wrecking Ball from Miley, and last but not least, Let It Go from Frozen, which led to that song being in my head still at this moment. So thank you, Ellen. I know you did that on purpose because I remember working with you and that song was forever in my head because of Zoe. So Justin Zane gave us, he said he had a much shorter playlist this time around. Also, no more Carly Rae to post for the end of the way for him. Thank God. Gregory will take care of that for you, Justin. We have The Neighborhood, Afraid and Sweater Weather, Cage the Elephant, Cigarette Daydreams, Bastille with Pompeii. That whole album was actually really solid. Fall Out Boy, my songs Know What You Did in the Dark, 21 Pilots, Car Radio, Holding On to You, Fits in the Tantrums, Out of My League, Tennis Court from Lord, and Vampire Weekend, Diane Young. Cousin Seamus gave us Rust Belt Fields with Slade Cleaves. One I hadn't heard, but I did check out, and it's pretty solid. Jessica Snitecki, also thank you for the blanket donations, Jessica. That was amazing. Mine would be You from Blake Shelton, Wrecking Ball from Miley, and The Fox from Elvis, which we all have to remember that. Zoe used to sing that very loudly in the stores while we were shopping. And Paul Brenner gave us Stay from Rihanna, and Corey Banker gave us Clarity from Zed and Come and Get It from Selena Gomez. And I love that Clarity song. It's so great. So those were the ones that I got on my ask. But Gregory, I saw that you also had a few that came in.
Yeah. Taylor, who I hired at Target and was maybe one of my best hires in my time there, she said The Way by Ariana Grande featuring Mac Miller. And she, this is the start of a major run from Ariana Grande that hasn't really ended. So she's not wrong about that one being. Chirp once again, he had Passing Through the Screen Door, The Wonder Years, Clairvoyant, The Story So Far, We Can't Stop Miley Cyrus, and then he said 2012 was a stronger year for me. And then I reminded him that Frank Turner's Tape Deck Heart came out that year. So he said Plain Sailing Weather would also be on his list. And then Danny B said Highlights by Eminem. Danny B's a huge Eminem fan. When I worked with her, some nights you would just find her in the back room rapping Eminem while she was working. And it was always pretty awesome to hear. So
nice. I like that we're getting a lot of responses coming in that we wouldn't, from genres or even artists that we don't normally hear, which is awesome too. Gregory, debuts this year.
This was a shorter debut list, and I'm not sure if it was just because there's less notable debuts this year or because I just went through them so quickly, because I did this before Thanksgiving. So I wanted to get my list done and out of the way. But Jim James of My Morning Jacket had his solo debut. Czarface, the hip hop supergroup, debut album this year. Daughter, The Neighborhood, Frenchman Montana. This was the first Run the Jewels album, which every like indie rock music critic fawned over this Run the Jewels, and it's great music. But it was kind of like, oh, let me get some hip hop cred, I think was where that was.
That's exactly what it was.
Then Luna George, wonderful singer / DJ out of England, and that was an amazing album, especially for a debut album. Andy Kaufman, which is kind of crazy because he'd passed away decades before that, but his debut album, which was just a collection of old recordings of his, was released this year. Earl Sweatshirt, The Weeknd, and Colleen Green's first album, Sock It To Me, was released this year. I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's still wrapped because this is my least favorite Colleen Green album. But when I saw her and talked to her at her merch table, she was just like the most personable and wonderful person. So I bought even the one I didn't particularly care for because I wanted to support her. But if you ever get a chance to see Colleen Green, I think she's a phenomenal guitarist, and she puts on a real hell of a show. She always wears sunglasses on stage, and it's just her and her guitar. And I guess the sunglasses were like a protective thing when she first went on stage, and now it's just like her thing.
Now, will she be on the Spotify playlist so that might get a chance to taste her?
I can throw something on because, as I said, not my favorite album. I think lyrically, this album's not as impressive as her later albums to come. She's definitely going to be on later lists.
Gotcha.
But I will throw 2 tracks from this album on the list just so folks, since I talked about her at length here now, folks can hear what she sounds like when they listen to her Spotify list, which we know they all do.
When we remember to post it.
Yeah, I have like 4 tracks, I guess 6 tracks now to add, but
beautiful. Does that round out the debuts for the year, Greg?
Yeah, that was all the debuts I saw. So
nice. So, Joseph, I'm curious about your tracks because last year was kind of a lackluster year for you, and I'm curious to see where things go now.
It was. So, starting with my Punk Goes update, of course. This year was kind of light on the Punk Goes albums. It was just the Christmas album. And I don't particularly like Christmas music at all. But there's a couple of tracks off this album that are that I enjoy. Newfound Glory did a recording of Nothing for Christmas. And that's a good one. Issues covered Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, originally by NSYNC. And if you like post-hardcore at all, this is a great post-hardcore cover of that song. And then Jason Lancaster, one of the 2 singers from Mayday Parade, I guess formerly, he's not with them anymore. He released All I Can Give You, which is kind of a sadder Christmas song, which is probably why I even like it. So those are my 3 Punk Goes picks this year. And then onto my regular list. There are a couple that popped up that people had mentioned. Bastile's Pompeii. What a massive hit this song was. And there's a recording on YouTube of them doing an acoustic one in this cathedral with the acoustics are just absolutely amazing. So go check that out if you like this song. It's even better than the studio recording. George Watsky released, I think it was his debut album this year. Most people don't know who George Watsky is. He started out on the slam poetry circuit and then got a little bit of YouTube fame because there's a video that is just titled White Guy Raps Fast. And that picked up some steam, and he's released a number of albums since. He's really good. The two songs off this that are my favorite are Hey Asshole and Cardboard Castles. Cardboard Castles also being the title of the album. Justin Timberlake had the two-part 2020 experience this year. Suit and Tie and Mirrors were just absolutely mega hits off this. One of them being more fun than the other one. Paramore, one of the weird times where it's the fourth album that is the eponymous album. So if you're keeping track at home, this is the fourth album that is eponymous. I keep saying, I think every time a Paramore album comes up, I'll be like, nah, I think this one's my favorite. And I don't think this one's my favorite, but it's got two of my favorite songs on it. Ain't It Fun and Still Into You are both off this album. And they're just fun pop punk tracks that you can just like jump around to. I put Run the Jewels on my list because Run the Jewels is a band that I have now seen 2 live sets for, because they've been they like to travel for hardcore shows for reasons. And I always really enjoy their sets. They're a lot of fun. They're just really, really good sets to go and be in the crowd for. But I could not tell you a single Run the Jewels song by name. So I just threw them on the list, knowing that they released their debut album this year. So pick a song and listen to it for me if you're watching the podcast right now. We Came This Romans, post-hardcore band I've mentioned a couple of times. They released a track called Hope this year. That is one of the better known songs that they released, and it's really, really good. I threw that one on the playlist this year. Avenged Sevenfold released an album this year. Again, a band I don't generally follow, but I understand why other people like them. And Hail to the King was released this year, and it's one of the few songs by Avenged Sevenfold that I actually know by name, which speaks to at least its popularity this year. Avicii Wake Me Up was mentioned this year already, but that's on my list. Jason Derulo, an artist I don't generally care about even the slightest, but trumpets, really fun because the trumpet part is fantastic to hear.
Wait, you didn't sing it.
Jason Derulo.
There it is. All right.
Iconopop apparently released I Love It again this year. It's both off of the original or the first album, Iconopop, and then the second album, This Is Iconopop.
Well, that's because Charlie XCX had to get a different credit because of her label change.
So I put that on my list. I can't remember if we mentioned it last year, but it's on my list again if it was. Panic at the Disco, not my favorite of the Panic albums, but both This Is Gospel and Girls, Girls, Boys is off this album. And those two would probably rank in, I don't know, maybe top 10 Panic songs. So it's on my list. Katy Perry, Roar. I'm pretty sure if the girls found out I didn't include this on my list, there'd be a tiny effing riot in our house. So it's definitely on here. Lady Gaga released Do What You Want. Another song I don't necessarily care that much about, but it was really big this year. So I included it. Childish Gambino, Sweatpants is probably my pick off of that album this year. Ylvis, What Does the Fox Say was mentioned already, but I'm going to mention it again. And now we're going to get to two albums that I really, really struggled to narrow down songs. Capital Cities had their debut this year in a tidal wave of mystery.
It's a great album.
And I love this album so much more than most people do. It's up there for potentially best 3-song run of the year because the album just starts so good. But I'm not going to get into that because that's actually on my short list. But my short list for capital cities is I Sold My Bed but Not My Stereo, Farrah Fawcett Hair featuring Andre 3000, and then Chartreuse. Those are all also a 3-song run. So I guess this could have been in the running for 4-song run, apparently, which I didn't realize. And then Common Courtesy, an album by A Day to Remember, was released this year. And I remember the first time I listened to this, I was going on a walk when I had just moved to California, living in Santa Maria on my own. And I used to do Friday walks around the block, drinking margaritas and listening to music. And this was off on one of my first walks. And this album just spoke to me that day and has since. And this could have also fallen in a 4-song run. It starts with City of Ocula, Right Back at It Again, and then a couple other songs that punch you in the face. And then towards the end of the album, we hit I Surrender, which leads me into my short list for the year, my top 3, and then my 3 runners up and my top song. Capital Cities, Safe and Sound, is in my run for my top 3. Probably the only song most people know by name, but this song was fucking massive that year. I don't think you could turn on a radio station without hearing it within 3 songs.
No.
Another song that was like that, Daft Punk, Get Lucky, featuring Pharrell. This song was everywhere even before the album was released, and then just got even bigger once the album was actually released.
The Ageless Wonder, Pharrell.
And then one that was mentioned by Chirp, The Wonder Years Passing Through a Screen Door. I probably like a cover later that they re-released a few years later, which will be mentioned in that year. But that's on my 3 runner-up. And then my song of the year, which is not going to make it out of this year because there's only one person that knows this song. And it's A Day to Remember, Sometimes You're the Hammer, Sometimes You're the Nail. It's hard to describe other than it's fucking awesome and go listen to it.
Nice. I actually had no idea what to even predict for you for this year, so solid.
If there's an A Day to Remember album that year, there's a real good chance if you throw a dart at that album and pick a song, there's a chance.
Well, now I kind of want to see what happens if I throw a dartboard at an album too. But I'm sure it's not that album.
just discus a dartboard at an album.
A Day to Remember to kick us off. Gregory, my friend.
Well, I always love when Joe has these songs that like were big on the radio that I'd never heard because I don't listen to the radio. So it might be the one track everyone knows but me from the band.
You don't know that song?
I don't know the band. I've never heard them.
What?
Well, it sounds like somebody's going to get a dartboard thrown at them after this.
How is that even possible? Seriously. I am amazed. Like, even at this point, I've mentioned a number of times, like I barely listened to the radio after I got a car in, what was that, 2008 when I started college. And I even knew that this song was on every station constantly. That's
was it played in
insane to me.
Messina?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't listen to the radio in Messina anyway, so it doesn't matter.
But in Podunk, Messina. So, you know, it was on radio stations in bigger cities too.
Yeah. I don't think people understand when I say I didn't listen to the radio. I didn't listen to the radio. When I didn't have an MP3 player, I carried around my CD player, my Discman, and 4 CDs when I took a walk, just in case. So I avoided the radio pretty much as well as I could. I think my 2 years in Orlando is when I listened to the radio the most. So,
well, make sure you check that song out because I think you'll like it.
It's going to be on the playlist.
Yeah, it'll be on the playlist, and I'll be listening to the playlist just like everyone else. So,
so Gregory, what do you got for us?
All right, I have to start off my list is "The Dog Is Mine" by Chaos, who released a double album, Black and Blonde. It was a pretty good album, but not the best Chaos album. But "The Dog Is Mine" is so catchy. Eels released an album, and just like every other album from Eels, it's just super great. "Bombs Away" and "Accident and Prone" are my 2 favorite ones off that. Joe mentioned the Timberlake featuring Jay-Z Suit and Tie. I didn't like Mirrors. Honestly, I didn't like this album.
I hate that album.
All, but Suit and Tie is great. I love Suit and Tie. Tyler, the Creator, Wolf and Lone would be the 2 tracks off that album I love. Has been mentioned by Chirp already, but Frank Turner, I love this album. This is my favorite Frank Turner album. So Recovery, The Way I Tend to Be, Plain Sailing Weather, or all of that, Plain Sailing Weather being the one Chirp mentioned. He plays all 3 of these songs, I think, every show. Every show I've seen him, he plays all 3 of these songs. Chance the Rapper had favorite song featuring Childish Gambino. That was my favorite Chance song off that. I'm not a huge Chance fan, but this was a song I enjoyed. The last LL Cool J album released to date, Hall of Famer LL Cool J, Authentic. It's interesting if you were to go back and listen to his early albums and then his last 3 or 4 albums, the number of guest spots on the later stuff is just insane for a guy who just carried an album by himself, who is known to carry live shows with his energy and stuff. Kind of crazy to hear all of that, but Give Me a Love featuring Seal, and then What Up features Chuck D, Travis Barker, Tom Morello, and Z-Trip. Those are my 2 songs. And I mean, like, I think Earth, Wind, and Fire are on track on this album. It's just insane the number of albums. Travis Barker's on a couple of the tracks here. So
he's on everything. That I'm convinced of it.
I was going to say, is this the start of him showing up everywhere on everything, or did that kind of start already last year?
I mean, it started with his solo album with a number of people that were on there, but it just kind of like, I think now him being notable and featured is more like after the solo album, he did guest spots like this but he was producing a lot. The guy was never not producing between things, but now he's like producing the tracks and featured on them.
Well, it's interesting. I've seen him live twice too, because for a while he was just traveling around with Yellow Wolf. Which is like to me the weirdest combination. It's a rapper and a drum, and that's it. And it kind of worked. It wasn't the worst set at either of the festivals.
Yeah, I can believe that. Joe mentioned Get Lucky. That song was everywhere, and it should have been everywhere. It should still be everywhere. Book of Love, Jimmy Eat World, my favorite Jimmy World song off that album. Then Aluna George, who I mentioned debut albums. I just love this album. I could have picked so many. So I went with Your Drums, Your Love. And then Body Music and Friends to Lovers is my favorite 2-track run of the year. But I could have honestly picked any 2 tracks off this album next to each other. It would have been my 2-track run. Whoa, Earl Sweatshirt off the debut featuring Tyler, the Creator. Electric Lady, Janelle Monáe featuring Solange. I love this album just so much. It's so good. My favorite Arctic Monkeys album was this year. Do I Want to Know and Why'd You Only Call Me When You're High are probably my 2 favorite tracks off that. So my 4-song track list, we're going to go back to Janelle Monáe with Dance Apocalypse, which is my favorite song off the album, and it's so fucking good. 4 Simple Words from Frank Turner is my absolute favorite Frank Turner track. And then Aluna George closes that album with the bonus track cover of Montel Jordan's This Is How We Do It. And it's so good. So that's in there. And I think I'm going to go Passing Through a Screen Door by the Wonder Years as my song of the year. It's just a beautiful, beautiful song. Not surprised that Chirp didn't forget this one, but forgot the Frank Turner, because Chirp was trying to get me into the Wonder Years for quite a while before I finally listened to him, and only because I bought tickets to one of their shows with him. And the cover Joe mentioned that's re-released is the first version I heard of this. And the Wonder Years are an amazing cover band. And if you get a chance to ever see them on one of their Halloween shows in October, do it, because they fully immerse themselves into whatever band they are. The year I saw them, they were Limp Bizkit, and they were completely Limp Bizkit. And then, not this past Halloween, but Halloween before, they did a live stream of it, and the 6 members of the band split into 2 different 3-man groups to do Blink-182 covers. That's awesome. Then at the end, got together, all 6 of them, to do a final track, and it was just amazing. And they, like, both bands became Blink-182. So it was really, they're a wonderful band. So Plus, I think I've already had a Frank Turner song as Song of the Year, so we'll go the Wonder Years for this one.
I dig it. Great.
So I was really close to also picking that song of my Song of the Year. The only reason I ended up not, because it was close, and I've already had an A Day to Remember song as the Song of the Year, I think. But because I like the other version better, and I'm going to mention this song again, and I think 2018 or 19 is when they re-release it. So it's going to come up again.
Yeah, I'll probably mention it again, but there's another cover that I absolutely love off that album, so that'll be mentioned.
Beautiful. My list was rather short this year. Again, it's getting shorter as we proceed. Got even shorter with folks, certain songs folks said, but I'll kick it off with Beautiful Day from Joshua Redden. Best Day of My Life from American Authors. I really enjoyed that album. Then they released a second one. I thought I'd love it. I hated it. Best I Ever Had from Gavin DeGraw. I Choose You from Sarah Bareilles. Burn from Ellie Goulding. Cop Car from Keith Urban. There's a country song for you, Ellen. Crooked Smile, Runaway, and Land of the Snakes from J. Cole. And he showed some love to TLC in that one, so that was good. Tegan and Sarah had their Heartthrob album, and I absolutely loved it. They had Drove Me Wild, Closer, and I Was a Fool. Big Tegan and Sarah fan. That album was my favorite of theirs. So it was awesome to hear that one. Doing What She Likes from Blake Shelton. Oh, I got a lot of country on here. Drink a Beer and Play It Again.
I'm starting to think you're actually a country fan.
Yeah, this is 4 or 5 years in a row where you've had country mentioned. So
I may
not even just one each year,
multiple country
songs.
I may be. This was a time where I was doing like all the summer playlists, and somehow those became popular. And then I was going to concerts at CMAC, and it was all country. I was just going to get drunk, and so these songs stuck with me. And yeah, why not? And so now that the country mayhem is out of the way, I have the Janelle Monáe song I chose was Queen featuring Erykah Badu. Greg stole all my love for her.
Good.
Yeah, the whole thing. The album's just fantastic. I listened to that numerous times actually in the last week. Highway Don't Care from Tim McGraw, featuring Taylor Swift and Keith Urban, and I'm all over everything Taylor. Hold On from Colby Calais. I Will Steal You Back from Jimmy Eat World. Old School Love from Lupe and Ed Sheeran, which almost made my top 3. But then I think I listened to it too much in the last week and it bounced out of my top 5. I did it to myself. Marry Me and Talk Dirty from Jason Derulo. Riptide, Vance Joy. Royals and Team from Lord. Say Something from A Great Big World. That was featuring Christina Aguilera. Not a big fan of that song, but it was on any TV drama that season, and everywhere I turned around the holiday season to go shopping, because apparently people are supposed to cry if they're not listening to Christmas music. Story of My Life from One Direction. That's probably the only song of theirs I enjoy. The Devil Is Alive from Rick Ross. Timeless from the Airborne Toxic Event. And Yay Yay from Schoolboy Q. And now I get to my top 5. I have You and I from John Legend. Brave from Sarah Bareilles, Drunken Love from Beyonce, Ain't It Fun from Paramore, and my song of the year is EXO by Beyonce. That song, I think people forget about it now, but it was everywhere to the point where John Mayer was covering it, Ryan Tedder was covering it. It was on a cappella stuff. It was such a beautiful song. Found out later on it was actually written by Ryan Tedder, and then he tried to take ownership of it afterwards. He's just a giant D-bag. He's a great songwriter, but I absolutely love the song. It's amazing, and just the number of people that it touched throughout that. I remember watching a documentary like of her tour and just all the fans sobbing, crying, all that stuff. And it's a really powerful song, but it's also very simple. So my song of the year, EXO from Beyonce.
I could never get into that album. I tried to listen to that Beyonce album so many times, and it just...
I liked that song. The other ones just really weren't it for me, but that was a beautiful song. And I think that was my first song of the year from Beyonce, actually, surprisingly. But very eclectic year once again as we move on to 2014. Folks, if you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave those comments to get the conversation started. Justin's been leaving us plenty of comments every week, which is pretty fun. Usually trashing me. So if you want to just come on and trash me, please do. It's a lot of fun that we did this. We actually, the fact we're approaching 30 episodes soon is pretty freaking awesome. So definitely jump on there. Gentlemen, any plugs for the week?
70 more episodes and we can head into syndication. So
one of our cyber operators at work told me they were gonna look up Battle of the Ballads on YouTube and check it out. No idea if she continued watching it. Probably scared her away on the first episode she watched, but
that's all good. Somebody gave it a shot.
So, one more view.
We always have to plug No Coast Defenders, which we are rolling into Hawkeye and Hit Monkey next week, but the new episode was put up today on Spotify and YouTube. Gregory uploaded those today, so definitely make sure to check those out. We had some fun discussions.
I didn't load the YouTube because that involved actually firing my computer up at the time, and I didn't want to do it. But it'll be up by the time that people see this, though.
So go to the Spotify while you're.
And I'll look completely different when you watch that. That was recorded 24 hours before this. So.
I mean, you're already going to be on here listening to our Spotify playlist, so you might as well just jump on over to No Coast Defenders
and then cycle back and watch episode 1 of this.
Any other shout outs, gentlemen?
I mean, let's shout out Gary B, the casual comic book guy. Let's beat Dan to the punch for it.
Always. And also Corey Cusserling, also known as the Bosie's Man for Twitter. And from That Sounds Terrible Pod for the podcast. Make sure to check him out on Instagram too. Fun guy. He puts a lot of heart into all of his reviews. I think he reviewed like 300 movies this year or something. So just always hustling at it. Great guy. And his takes are often very fun and not as negative as most reviewers. So definitely check him out and give him some love. And those podcasts have been picking up.
Shout out to this random desk lamp putting in work as a spotlight this week.
But you're the real spotlight.
I mean, since my ring light gave out, I'm using a desk lamp for it too. So
I'm using dim lighting because all of my space has been taken up because Laura now has a home office and I had to move the comic book room. So, gentlemen, we enter 2014 next week. Any excitement that you have about a particular track?
There's a couple albums I'm excited to talk about for next year.
I like a whole media album.
I couldn't tell you 2013 from 2014 to 2015. It truly in my brain at all. So I will know nothing except the Vance Joy song you mentioned. The album was released in 2014, which is the only reason I didn't mention Riptide this year. So the people will get to hear it 2 years in a row.
All
That's
right.
the only thing I know about 2014.
That might be our first 2-track play on a playlist. Gents, I'll see you in 2014.
We'll see you then.